We are joined now by Mike Wagenheim, a reporter for the Jewish News Syndicate. Wonderful to have you this morning. So the Israeli military saying that intelligence it had gathered showed Iran was approaching the point of no return on its nuclear program. You have an Israeli ambassador to the UN on another network this morning saying there was intelligence suggesting Iran was moving forward with plans to destroy Israel, planning another attack like October 7th. Do you think Israel saw this as the best and perhaps last chance to act?
It certainly seems that way. Israel has obviously been keeping close tabs on the Iranians, so much so that they had Mossad agents on the ground there, that they were able to lure the high-ranking generals into the meeting at the same time, at the same place. Obviously, the intelligence is pretty high. The question becomes, what's your threshold, not only for Israel, but for Donald Trump, for the American administration? What is the threshold? How close to that nuclear breakout point can you get without taking action in coordination? Obviously, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu felt that that threshold had essentially been crossed, that even if negotiations can somehow continue, although I think that's far-fetched at this point, that something had to be done at this moment. It became apparent to President Trump that the Iranians were just biding their time, just as they did with the Obama administration, just as they did with the Biden administration, and moving closer and closer to a nuclear weapon. So in the end, the opinion was amongst both the Israeli government and the American government that yes, that it had to be done now, or it was going to be essentially too late going forward. And whatever we heard last night, very general statement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, almost, I wouldn't say disassociating the Americans from the Israeli operation, but certainly kind of putting up a little bit of a line there. I think President Trump cleared up this morning that indeed this was done in coordination, close coordination with the Israelis.
Yeah, and as we outlined off the top here, it appears these strikes weren't meant to decimate not only the nuclear capabilities of Iran, but also their ability to fight and retaliate, taking out Iranian leadership that would call for strategic retaliation. To what extent are Iran's forces in a state of chaos right now?
Number one, I'm not so sure the nuclear threat has really been eliminated. I mean, there's obviously heavy damage at Natanz base there, but two other well-known nuclear facilities there in Iran, at least according to reports there on the ground, have either remained untouched or sustained limited damage. So I'm not so sure the nuclear threat is eliminated, but certainly the infrastructure of Iranian leadership has been decimated. It's Hezbollah 2.0. This is exactly how Israel ran the operation to decapitate Hezbollah's leadership, gathering them all in one place at the same time. And I think a key factor here, and it went not unmentioned for so long, but kind of flew under the radar, so to speak, for so long, was the ballistic missile program, which is what Iran can really use to harm Israel beyond the nuclear threat. I'm talking about shorter term, generating 50 to 100 ballistic missiles per month. This is what they used in cooperation with the drones to attack Israel twice last year. The ballistic missile infrastructure for Iran was decimated last night as well. So keeping the nuclear issue aside for a moment, the short-term and even medium-term ability for Iran to really retaliate against Israel with any kind of coherence was incredibly harmed last night by these Israeli strikes.
Yeah. President Trump had also told reporters while these talks were ongoing that he was trying to put the brakes on Israel to stop a strike like this, perhaps as a negotiation tool to say, hey, I'm keeping Israel at bay. Let's make a deal. Do you think that being unsuccessful, this 2-month ultimatum passing, were some major forces in this outcome?
We have to be honest here. President Trump has a habit of laying down deadlines, 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is. And he'll oftentimes say, hey, we're making progress here. I don't want to hold us to some arbitrary deadline, even if that's what he said himself. So I'm not so sure the Iranians were really taking that 60-day warning so seriously. If President Trump said what he's telling the American people that he actually told the Iranians was, I'm dead serious about this 60-day deadline, maybe that might have been a different story, and maybe the Iranians just misread in a very fatal way the situation here. But Trump did, in fact, lay down that 60-day deadline. Steve Witkoff was supposed to fly to Oman on Sunday to continue negotiations with Iran. So, yeah, this was, I wouldn't say a double game of sorts, but kind of parallel tracks that, yes, the door is open to negotiation. Yes, we want a deal. Yes, diplomacy first, but don't jerk us around. Don't take our, powers for granted here. And Iran completely misread the situation.
You know, in just a couple of hours from now, the president will attend a National Security Council meeting, also set to meet with world leaders here shortly. What are you anticipating in developments across all those fronts?
I think the priority number one for President Trump here is to make sure American forces are taken care of and American interests are taken care of. You know, even some Israel supporters within the Republican Party, Iran hawks. Yes, they back Israel to the hilt, but were also very clear in their statements last night and this morning that Iran needs to make sure it doesn't attack American interests and that American interests need to be kept safe. I think that's number one right now on President Trump's mind, and I think that'll be a big focus of the National Security Council meeting coming up at 11 Eastern time in the Situation Room, is to make sure that the embassies, that the air bases in the Middle East, that sensitive locations throughout the world are protected, that there are enhanced protections for that. I think secondary to that is ensuring that American forces and American assets are in place, just as they were last time around last year when Iran attacked Israel twice, to ensure those things are in place to get ready for what's sure to be a retaliatory action taken by Iran. And I think those will be the two big focal points of that meeting coming up.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right, Mike Wagenheim, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.